Hi there, welcome to your video lesson for the week. So today we are looking at the bridge of Tears in Heaven. What I really like about this particular part of the song is that we have a key change. So we get to use a couple different chords that we have not been talking about through our verse and chorus so far. Now the upside to this is that most of the chords that we use are open chords and familiar chords. We're going to see C, G, D, E minor, and an E major in there. The downside to this is that it's a little tricky when those chord changes happen. So let's start by looking at what the chord shapes are that we're going to be using. So as I mentioned, we have a key change that happens when we go into the bridge. So right as we ended our second chorus, we end on an A chord. So our second ending has us actually landing on an A chord. And the way that we transition into this key change is that we're going to do a hammer-on that takes us from the open A string. We hammer on to that B note, which is going to be the second fret of your A string, and then right here onto our C. So once we get to this C note, which is the third fret of your fifth string, we're going to go right into our C chord. Okay? So quick little transition, but let's try it out. So we're here in our A major, and we're just going to play a hammer-on up those three notes. Alright? So you went from open A to our second fret, B, to our third fret, C. And that's going to allow us to land right there in that C major chord. So our first measure of the bridge has us playing our C, and then we're going to go into our G over B, which again means that we're playing a G chord, but we're emphasizing the low B note, so the second fret of our fifth string. So when we first play this chord, we're going to play our open, second string is open and our third string is open, and we're allowing our thumb to be on the fifth string. So we're plucking that chord, but we want to make sure that our ring finger is in place on this third fret, because we're going to need this note, this high G note, to help us transition to our next chord, which is an A minor. Alright, so not a lot to review there, but let's just take it. We're going to hammer on into our C chord, and for now we're just going to pluck that C chord, go into our G over B, play that added G note on our high E string, and then into our A minor. Now from here, our A minor is actually held out for the first beat of our next measure. So the next chord shape that we have to direct our attention to is going to be our D with an added F sharp. This is what we've used in our chorus, or sorry, our verse in the beginning. So this will be a pretty familiar shape for us. Following that, we're going into our G major, back to a D over F sharp, to an E minor, back to a D over F sharp, with a quick G. Okay, now I moved through those a little bit more quickly, but the basic pattern that we have is that we keep returning back to that D over F sharp. Alright, so sort of use that as your pivot point. All these other chord changes are going to continually lead us back to that D over F sharp. So once we play the A minor, we're going to pluck that D over F sharp. Our next measure, so our beat 1, will be us on a G chord into that D over F sharp. Our beat 1 of our next measure is an E minor, back to our D over F sharp, and then a quick G, meaning that when we actually play this chord in time, we're going to find that it lands right on that last beat of the measure, so beat 4. So we're only going to play that G quickly, but note that you want to be holding down this high D note right here. So the second fret of your third string. When we play, or sorry, the second fret, words tangled up, the third fret of our second string. You want to make sure you're holding down that D note in that G chord when we make the quick change. And then it leads us right back to our C. So let's review that before we take on that whole second part of the bridge. So we're at the very beginning, we're going to take that transition, pluck the C, G over B, high G note added, A minor. We'll let that A minor carry through our beat 1, and then D over F sharp, G, D over F sharp, E minor, D over F sharp. Quick G, make sure that added D note is in there. Now right after we play that G chord with our added D note, we are going to pull off of that added D, and it leads us right into our C major. Alright, so it's our little transition to bring us back to our progression. So now that we're back at our C major, we're going to see a lot of the same chord shapes happen. We have our C major, our G over B. This time we don't have to add that high G note, so that third fret of our high E string, we don't need to hold it down this time. We're actually going to play that E string open, and then we're going to go into our A minor again. Our A minor carries through for that beat 1, just as we did in the last progression, and then we're back to our D over F sharp. We're going to follow that D over F sharp with a G, back to our D over F sharp, then we're shifting into an E major, and at this point we're going to kind of retrieve an earlier part of our riff, where we go from our E major to our A, up to where we're holding down the 4th fret and 3rd fret. So 4th fret of our 3rd string and 3rd fret of our 2nd string. And this is transitioning us back to our main riff, which starts us on our A major chord. Alright, so let me just play through that E major transition. What we've done is we've transitioned from our key of G, and we're going back in to our key of A. And the way that we're doing that is we're using that little riff that we have earlier in the song to lead us right back to our main key. Okay, so I'm going to take it right there on that E major, A, sliding up to the 4th and 3rd fret, back to your A, which loops us back into our main riff. Okay, so now that we know our chord shapes and where we're going, what we need to focus on is the timing. For this video lesson, what we're going to do is find the sort of round each chord change to the nearest beat. Alright, so in other words, we're going to find where those chord changes are happening on the 1, the 3, sometimes the 4, and we're going to try to find the basic framework for everything before we go back and start talking about the right hand. Okay, so for a basic breakdown of how the timing will work on these, we're going to start with that little transition moving us from our open A string into our C. Now once we're here in our C, everything we're going to do is just pluck the chord. We're not worrying about how we're dividing it up and what our picking pattern is doing just yet. We're going to just pluck the full chord. So we're starting here on C, and we're going to play C for 1, 2, and on beat 3 we're going to shift to our G over B for 3. Our beat 4, we're going to play that added G note that we have on our high E string. So here's 4, and then we're going to play our A minor for beat 1. Okay, so what this will sound like is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay? Once we play our A minor, that was back on our 1 beat, we're going to play that A minor for 2 counts. So we had our 1, 2, beat 3, we are on our our D major with an F sharp added for 3, 4, and then then to our G major for beat 1. Alright? We play that G for 2 beats. 1, 2, and then 3 and 4, this is where we're going to start pivoting. We're back to our D over F sharp. 3, 4, E minor is 1, 2, D over F sharp is 3, and then that quick G comes in for our 4. Alright, that little pull off will be our and. Before we repeat the progression for part 2, let's go back and play through those chords with a count attached. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and. Alright, let's try that one more time, this time with a little bit of a tempo behind it. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and. Then we start our progression again. Back on C, we have a very similar count to what we did. So our chord changes are going to follow pretty closely, but remember we have just a couple new shapes that we're throwing in there. So our timing will be a little bit different, but right as we get back to that C major chord, it starts us on 1. So let's go through those chord shapes and listen to the count as we play through them. So our beat 1 finds us back here on C, and we play 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Sorry, I needed a page turn there. So 1, 2, beat 3 has us back on the D over F sharp. 3, 4. Beat 1 is us on our G chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then here we have our movement in our E major. 1, 2, A, 4, back to A on 1. Okay, so let's try that whole piece. Again, what we've done is we've rounded each chord to its nearest beat to help us find the framework for everything. So the way that we're going to play it is to go through, find where each chord change needs to happen on either the 1, the 3, or the 4. The detail picking is going to be talked about in the next video. So let's try putting it on a tempo and see if we can kind of hear the form of the song taking place. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2.